We are live. Hello, everyone. I want to invite you to listen to, we're going to talk about my dear friend Chris Miller, who is an amazing story. We just did a podcast. She's one of going to be my regulars on the podcast, but she has an amazing story of her lupus journey. And I thought we just had an amazing hour conversation. I thought, let's do it live. We've never done a joint one before. We'll give it a try. And we figured it out. And I just want to introduce you to Chris. Chris has an amazing Substack as well, guys, the Dr. Chris Miller Substack. So make sure that you join, check her out. If you ever do want to deal with inflammation, she is the expert of inflammation. So Chris, welcome to the Substack Live.
Thank you. Fun to be here. I've never done a Substack Live before.
I know this is really fun. I've only done a few, and then I'd like the first time people couldn't comment, but now we should be able to hear everyone comment. So welcome, Afsi, Lisa. We're seeing the amazing fun. As people get joining, we can start talking deeper. But can we highlight a little bit about your story real quick, just so people understand what an amazing journey you've had over the last 15 years? We've been friends for, 13, 14 years now. Tell me a little bit about really what's going on, like how it started and where you are now and what you plan the Substack to be about.
Yeah, thank you. So my journey was that I was working in the emergency department and as a doctor and started to have swelling in my fingers, and it kind of progressed to joint pain and swelling all over my body and fatigue, pretty bad fatigue. And so I saw the doctor and was diagnosed with this autoimmune disease, and it was very active. It was lupus. But I just see it as a connective tissue disorder. My immune system was going crazy. It was very, very active and I was very inflamed. And so I made diet changes, lifestyle changes, and I focused on that quite exclusively for the first several years, I would say. And I wasn't getting the answers I needed. I still had elevated inflammatory markers. I still had symptoms. I still had joint pains. And so I started to dig deeper. And so my Substack, I started it, which I finally found answers, and I'm in a so much better place. My inflammation is low now, but I started my Substack for one, to let people know my journey. If that just because you're not getting better at the beginning or with what you're currently doing probably just means you haven't figured out what exactly is going on. And so you just need to dig deeper and keep going, because there's a reason that we're making inflammation and we're creating it and it's ongoing. And there's a reason that we're not getting better. And so that's what we're looking for to figure out. So that's what my Substack's all about. And I'm trying to share different things people can be doing or looking for, and also to try to give hope so that people don't feel, because I felt like it was my fault when I wasn't getting better. And I'm trying to share that, not to feel that way.
I love this. So I really think it's important when we had our podcast, you mentioned something really cool was like people like, oh, inflammation is the basis for so many things, chronic disease, autoimmune disease, whatever. But you're like, yeah, I understood that. But what was the root cause of my inflammation? So in the podcast, we talked about, what labs are doing. What does that actually mean? Like, so many things that we talked about the body systems, how those are affected. Like there's such a broad category. Can you just give us a kind of a synopsis of what inflammation actually is? Because people's like, oh, eat this anti-inflammatory diet or decrease your inflammation. You're like, well, I kind of get what inflammation is, but what is inflammation? So people feel like they understand the foundation of what we're discussing.
Yeah. So that's why I call myself a root cause doctor, because everyone says the root cause of chronic illness, which it is proving to be true. But what's the root cause of the inflammation? Like, where is that coming from? And so that's what I do with people, is try to get to the root cause, it out. But inflammation is part of your immune system. It's their immune cells that are designed to protect you. So it's the acute phase reactants, the acute process where it comes in, where if you're exposed to a virus or pathogen, but injured, then your inflammation goes up to protect you, to take care of you, to overcome this inflammation. And so that is what acute inflammation really is. It's really just the immune system. But then when it doesn't get put out, so inflammation goes up, but your body's supposed to have a way to put it out. And if your body can't put it out, so say you twist an ankle, your inflammation markers go up because you're drawing blood and that cofactors in. things like fibrinogen and platelets and immune cells to heal you and repair your twisted ankle or whatever it is that's going on. If it's a virus, you're pulling in you're pulling in natural killer cells and these immune cells and trying to fight it off. But if it's chronically elevated, it's not being put out, then that's where you start to get damage because chronic elevation is these immune cells that can start to go haywire and they lead to other problems like we talked about in the podcast, increased blood sugar and damage to the endothelium and blood cells and can lead to inflammation in the brain and changes in gut microbiome and all sorts of problems if it's chronically elevated and does not come down.
Right, because the diet by itself was not enough to move the markers for you, right? So you had that acute inflammation, like I broke my ankle 6 months ago. Whew, blew up. That's great. Help me heal. But if you're running into this chronic inflammatory state, and we talked about menopause being interesting hormonal basket case causing more inflammation. People feel it like I did. The brain health. Can we speak a little bit about brain health and heart health when it comes to inflammation? Because what does that look like? Is it changing our mood? What is it higher risk for certain things like dementia? Like, what are those things we really should be paying attention to? And inflammation really should be at the top of our list when we want to get healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. So inflammation is doing several things. So one, if it's chronically elevated, it's damage. It can be damaging the blood vessels. So
Mm,
heart and the blood vessels will hurt the brain too because it's going to decrease blood flow, right? So that's one area. Two, it changes your microbiome. And in your gut, your microbiome produces like 90% of your serotonin and other neurotransmitter, GABA and others as well. Tryptophan, those are produced in the gut, a lot of it. And so if those start changing and you're not producing the same level of things like serotonin, let's say, then your brain, you will feel mood changes. So you may have more anxiety, more depression. Depression and anxiety have both been linked with chronic inflammatory conditions. And so now, when I see someone that has depression, anxiety, I'm looking right away to microbiome and to inflammation because if
mhm.
you start in those areas, you can get a grasp of it a little bit. It can also be other things. So it can also be um, neurochemical imbalances. So that still is true and possible, but inflammation is a very common trigger to it or cause to of making it worse. But it also can, when you have inflammation, you probably most people have heard of leaky gut where the endothelium, the gut gets disrupted, and the microbiome goes across, but so can bigger protein molecules like peptides and other things go across that aren't supposed to go across. And so you get leaky gut with inflammation, which is triggered by inflammation, but you also get leaky brain. So we have a
Mm,
here, and that is there to protect our brain from these chemicals coming into it. And if you have chronic inflammation affecting your gut, it can also affect your brain. And so now things go across that aren't supposed to. And this has been proven. And this is brain fog, right? People with like me have chronic inflammation know we have brain fog. So that is it where you can't think, you can't focus, you're not yourself, you can't sleep as well, your mood changes, and this is all chronic inflammation, which you can get under control, and you should just work to get it.
leaky brain. I have never heard that term. That is incredible. Okay. So many factors regarding inflammation. Can we give maybe 5 habits? Because it is the habit healers and you, and maybe 5 things that people can do immediately. Because, when you are under the state of inflammation, you got the brain fog, you're tired, you're fatigued, you get easily overwhelmed. It's like this crazy world that we live in. What are some 5 easy things that people can do and just start moving in the path so maybe they start seeing some improvements and then they can build upon? Like, what would you recommend?
My first thing I'd recommend to everyone is take a deep breath and don't stress about it. I stressed, right? So just it's okay. Take a breath. Know that it's going to be okay. That you're going to get answers. So
Can you walk us through some of the breathing techniques that you do
yeah,
with folks?
2 types of breathe. Well, actually, there's 3, but I'll give a couple. Um, I was trained in the 4-7-8 breaths, where so you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and you breathe in through your nose and you breathe in for the count of 4, and then you hold for the count of 7, and then you breathe out through your mouth for the count of 8. And it's purposely twice as long on the way out. And so I would recommend 2 to 4 rounds of that and do it while you're sitting because you're blowing off CO2 so you can get a little lightheaded at the beginning of doing it. So that the long exhale is what calms you down and triggers the vagal nerve response. And so that's what we're looking for. So that's my favorite way. It can drop your blood pressure by 20 to 30 points just by doing that. And so doing breaths, just do some breaths. And the other one is just box breathing. So breathing in for 5, hold for 5, and out for 5, and then in for 5. Just doing box breathing. And I like to think of it like breathe in for 5 and out for 5. So you,
I saw someone do this one time. Breathe in for so many out. And this is
yeah,
great for little kids to
yeah,
teach them to
yeah.
just follow the silhouette of your
I
hand.
love that. Love that. And it's just that rhythm and flow like a river, like this, just the beauty of it, the simplicity of it. But that does so much to start to reduce our inflammation. And because we're so wound up and stressed. And I know that firsthand. And we won't get better if we're like in that tight wound up state. So one is that. And then my second one is just get outside. Take
Mm,
Even if you just open the door and breathe fresh air from outside will calm you down in a way that indoors just doesn't. So, those are
yes.
that's my first step that I would say. The second thing I would say for everyone is to eat more leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables. So whatever you're doing in your diet, if you're still inflamed, try to get them in. You can do them both raw and cooked. They don't have to all be raw. And I've tested it both ways on myself and different patients, but definitely have some of them be raw though, for sure. So, and if you're not used to them, start with very small amounts. You can blend them, you can lightly cook them so that your gut gets used to them. So if you're not doing the leafy greens right now,
What is in leafy greens and the cruciferous vegetables that actually decreases inflammation? Like, what
they're
is that?
They're probably well, there's several things that are in them, but it's, they're so high in phytonutrients,
Mm.
and there's so much evidence that those phytonutrients work directly on the microbiome, and green leafy vegetables have substance that works directly on the microbiome that feeds it. It's like a sugar that's in green leafy vegetables. It's a natural sugar. It's not like sugar like we think of it. It feeds the microbiome and helps it go into an anti-inflammatory state. And so those
Ah,
are most powerful. When I'm inflamed, for whatever reason, I will try to make sure I have cruciferous veggies and or leafy greens with every meal, whether that's a salad, whether that's mixed into a soup, whether that's or stew, whether that's however it looks for everyone. You can blend it, you can heat it, however it looks, but and don't overcook it. Like if you roast it, that's you're not going to get the benefits of lightly steaming it or cooking into a soup or something or a stew. So those are my two biggest power hitters. My third one would be to add a little turmeric, actually. Um, Turmeric is powerful for retention. So, and I like to buy turmeric root and recommend like a quarter inch of it. So, blending it, eating it, it tastes terribly bitter. So, I'll warn you now. Um, I eat mine. I chew it real fast and take a swig of water to clear it, and then I'm good and eat my meal right after that. But it's a powerful. You can do supplements. I like the root myself, but you can go either way. So depending on where you are. So that would be 3. 4, I would say, now that you're working on your stress, because you can't do anything till you worked on that, but really try to improve your sleep. And that's so hard because we know that when you have elevated inflammation, that those inflammatory markers decrease sleep. So
mm.
those of us with increased inflammation, we are not sleeping. That's because we have that, but still work on your sleep habits. And if only we had someone to teach us how to build our habits. Um, Really work on your sleep habits. I know I've worked hard on mine and over time it has paid off. So I sleep a lot better, but it's taken, really some tweaks and dialing that in. But so that would be my fourth. And my last one is again a lifestyle one would be to get movement. So when we're inflamed, we have brain fog, we have fatigue. Fatigue is a huge part of inflammation. We don't feel like doing anything, but even stretching, light walking around, I really recommend getting outdoors, even if you can just walk to the end of the driveway and back, or if you just sit outside, if you can't walk, but even just stretching, if you can't, if you can't move, like, it circulates lymph. It helps clear us of the toxins in our body. It helps us. We need we need to move. And so if we're not moving, we will get stasis. We get increased inflammatory markers, increased blood sugar, increase everything we're trying to lower. So even if we feel terrible, like we want to just be moving, stretching, light walking, whatever we can manage without overdoing it for people who really have inflammation.
I have a really fun story about just how movement can also just be the spark that hits a lot of other habits. So I had a patient back in Rifle, Colorado, who was diabetic. She was on insulin. She was type 2 diabetes. She was on insulin. She was significantly overweight and hypertension, depression, was dealing with a lot of stress raising a child by herself and working long hours at a stressful job. And I was like, this was many years ago before I really even knew how to term it like a micro habit, but I knew I had to make it small enough that she didn't feel resistance in her emotions to doing something. Like, one more thing on my plate, I cannot do this. And what was incredible was I was like, okay, when are you home and outside? Like, tell me, when is that? She goes, Dr. Marbas, when I get in my car to go to work and when I come home from work, that is literally when I'm outside. And I was like, okay, can you, when you drive in from after work, leave your car door open and just walk to the end of your driveway and back? And she's like, yes. And I was like, can you do that? She's like, okay. I was like, do you pinky promise, literally in clinic, pinky promising me like to walk to the end of her driveway? She goes, is that all I need to do? I was like, yes. I had already understood that she would probably do more. But even if she didn't, it was a starting point. But what happened was she did that for a little bit and she goes, "Ugh, I can walk around the block." She walked around the block. Then she's like, oh, I can add some more, plants, healthy, anti-inflammatory foods to my diet. So she started doing that, right? She stopped drinking sodas, different things. And before you know it, that little tiny nidus micro habit started this huge, really awesome snowball effect for her. And before you knew it, she reversed her type 2 diabetes, stopped all her meds, and lost 60 pounds. And it all started with a pinky promise to walk to the end of her driveway. And that's the power of micro habits, because you're going below the threshold of defensiveness and like, I don't want to do it, but you're starting that cascade of events. And so it's a powerful story that I saw play out in front of me that I'll never forget. And so that's absolutely right. So any of these things that you mentioned are such an important thing to consider. So absolutely incredible. So can we talk a little bit also about, you see patients, you're licensed in 21 states, is that right?
Hmm.
Oh my goodness. And so I appreciate exactly what that entails. Can you, so people can see you, is your websites linked on your Substack if they are really struggling and want to see a doctor who can really help them through this?
Yep, my website is my name, chrismillermd.com, and I call it Elevated Integrative Medicine because it's an elevated level of care, and I live in the mountains. But yeah, so I'm open to patients, and I love working with people who have like tough things going on and really want to get to the root cause and figure out like their
Oh,
individual.
you froze. There you go. Can you say that again? I think you froze, at least on my end. Maybe it was just me, but
Yeah, so I really love working with people with complicated different things going on so we can really help people get to the root cause and figure them out because we're all unique. We're all so individualized and what triggers me is not the same that's going to trigger someone else or someone else or someone else. And it's really cool because when we figure ourselves out, that's when we start to really feel better and get the results. So,
absolutely. Well, I think that was amazing. We just wanted to jump on because, one, we wanted to try this joint live thing together, but just really share some tidbits on inflammation with you guys, because I think probably so many people are walking around with even slight inflammation. Like, I had a really interesting, just a real another interesting story. A patient that had been very healthy, very active, started having creeping up of blood pressure out of nowhere. And just, we couldn't figure out, he had no pain, nothing else. He started having really, really strong fatigue. Ended up being, he had had a root canal done and had an infection in this root canal that he couldn't feel because it was a root canal. Got that squared away. The inflammatory markers dropped, the blood pressure normalized. So this is like the hidden stuff, right?
yeah, so dental is a huge one that I look for in my patients. We even check for oral microbiome sometimes and that. But I have had patients with chronic inflammation, and one of them was, for example, recently, we couldn't figure it out, and she was getting hip replacement surgery. And after hip replacement, so she had chronic inflammation in her hip from having a joint on joint hip. And after hip replacement surgery, it was totally gone, like just a few, like 1 month later. It was so low. And we were like, it was the hip. So there's always a source. So we just want to figure each person out. Mhm.
And so curious, so if she had that hip inflammation, and so it's like, let's say you do have this injury that's ongoing, back pain, whatever, does that affect that inflammation rise? Would you say that that affects other systems because you're in that chronic inflammatory state, even from an acute injury or maybe a chronic injury?
If it raises your CRP, then yes, it is
Okay.
now making it, because you will often see people, I'll often see people, you will too, with back pain or with shoulder pain, and their CRP is not elevated. So in that
Yeah.
case, they don't have the systemic inflammation, they just have it local. But in this patient, her CRP was up and her SED rate was up too, actually. And both of those came down after her surgery.
Can you walk us through just real quickly before we jump off, is what is, you mentioned SED rate. What does that SED rate mean?
SED rate is another inflammatory marker. It's a marker of the red blood cells. If they're a little bit inflamed, it's how fast they fall. They measure it, and so if they fall, I believe it's if they fall slower, then the SED rate goes up. I can double check that though, but that's what it is. So it's a little bit different. The CRP is marker that's made in the liver, so it's reflecting other things like IL-1, IL-6, tumor necrosis factor. You may have heard of some of these numbers with like COVID, or people with autoimmune have heard of some of them, but that's one reason why it goes up. And then the SED rate is a second factor that's a little bit different. They're not totally linked. So certain disease processes will raise the SED rate and not the CRP. And
Mm.
many of them raise the CRP and not the SED rate. And sometimes they raise both. So it's worth checking both, and then and following the one elevated till it comes down.
So this is the kind of detailed information that your guys are going to see. Go check out Chris's Substack. Make sure you listen to our podcast every month. See Chris if you want to, refer your friends, family, see her yourself. She's incredible. I call her the doctor's doctor. She's that, like, one of the smartest people I know. So definitely a fantastic human being. So thank you, Chris, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to come spend with us and join our first joint live Substack. I have such a nice group of people because I'm always like, let me figure this one out again. That was my first two lives. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Hold on. So anyway, appreciate all of you. And yes, absolutely. Thank you for the hearts, everyone. Um, thank you. Thank you. So, so thankful for the Substack. I mean, it's just been such a blast to grow on here. So we will see you guys next time. And again, have a great rest of your weekend, Chris. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.